And that little brochure that we wrote was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Sometimes you have to close a door for other doors to open. A failure is an occurrence. It's not a definition. And it's a learning opportunity for you to not repeat it, but to help others avoid it as well.
I am so excited for my guest today. Thank you for joining us today, Sharon.
I am so delighted to be with you, April. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, well, we are excited to talk about your new upcoming book. We've got so many questions to dig into, but first, I would love to know how you got into this type of work. I know that you're also very passionate about financial literacy, and I'm curious how you ended up on this path to begin with.
Well, thank you, April. Obviously, I've been around a long time, so I'll try and give you the Cliff Notes version. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial home, but we were lower middle class. We lived in a little tiny house between my mom's beauty shop and my dad's used car lot. We had rental properties that I had to help scrub out bathrooms between tenants at the age of 10. I swore I'd never be an entrepreneur. I was going to be a college graduate and a professional. So I was the first generation to get a degree and started in public accounting, one of the very first women in public accounting in the Southeast United States. Loved it. Young, single, Atlanta, what could be better? Mm-hmm. And then I get to about the age of 25 and I realized I was working incredibly long hours for someone else. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, my parents started looking a lot smarter and I made the decision to leave public accounting and I haven't ever looked back. I've kept my CPA credentials for almost 35 years, but started a woman's magazine, sold that, then met the inventor of the first talking children's book. I just had another interview happen to have right here where back in the late 80s, 1987, we founded this company when kids didn't like to read. And it was kind of the first electronics for children. And I learned so much about printing and about manufacturing, but most about the power of association. So we aligned with companies like Disney, little companies, Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, Marvel Comics, and such an incredible opportunity because parents didn't know us and this new technology, but they knew those companies. And so it allowed us to really exponentially grow around the world. Sold that company in 91, moved to Arizona. 92, my oldest son went off to college in September, came home in December in credit card debt. I was so mad at him, but I was more mad at myself because I realized being out in the real world that most people didn't think like I did. I grew up in an arena where it was all about assets, investing your time to buy, build, or create assets. The rest of the world, it seemed like, was just chasing money, time for money. And then to see my son get into debt like that was December of 1992. And I dedicated the rest of my career to financial literacy, financial education, and entrepreneurial education. Started working with schools, hence the white hair. And a few years later, my husband called me one day. Every phone call can change your life. And he had met this guy named Robert Kiyosaki who had flip-flops and a Hawaiian shirt with this idea for a board game. And I met Robert at a beta test for the board game Cash Flow and loved it. Said, I want to help you commercialize this. I was the only one that got out of the rat race. And because of my experience from the talking book and the magazine, I was able to help pull that together and commercialize it. But during that process, he told me he wanted to charge $200 for the board game. And we're talking 1996. Yeah. So that's pretty pricey. So maybe we should write a brochure about what your philosophy is that will convince people that they want to buy the book. And I think I have one here on my desk. And that little brochure that we wrote was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And most people don't know that because we never expected this to be a product in its own right. We were writing a brochure, something they'd give away. I never expected to write more than one book. So all of a sudden people wanted more. We decided to write a trilogy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. Oh no, they wanted more. So in our 10 years, we wrote 15 books together. I launched an additional series of books called Rich Dad Advisors, and we grew the Rich Dad brand around the world in well over 100 countries, over 50 languages. And it was truly an example of viral marketing before the internet, before Amazon, believe it or not. And so that was really an amazing time. In 2007, I made the decision to leave because Robert and I were no longer aligned with what we want. Money does just amplify more of who you really are. And we were no longer on the same path
Hmm.
as to what we wanted out of the company. So I made that choice to leave, not knowing what was in front of me. I'm thinking Rich Dad was my legacy. 15
Mm.
books is like giving birth 15 times, right?
Yeah.
And a few months later, I got a phone call from President Bush asking me to be on the President's Advisory Council, and I served Bush and Obama. I would not have had that call had I still been at Rich Dad. A few months later, I got the call from the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We know what was happened to the economy in 2008.
Hmm.
And they said, please help us reinvigorate Napoleon Hill's teachings. I would not have
Mm.
gotten that phone call had I still been at Rich Dad. And I share this story with you because each and every one of you, sometimes you have to close a door for other doors to open.
Yeah.
And so I challenge you to think about your own life. Is there something in your life that you need to stop doing so that you have new opportunities unfold for you? So fast forward, I had an incredible opportunity. I've written multiple books with the foundation, from 3 Feet from Gold, Outwitting the Devil, Think and Grow Rich for Women, Success in Something Greater. And then my most recent book, which we're going to talk about, Exit Rich, is with Inc. magazine. I'm very excited about it because it's my 26th book, and it brings everything together. So many people who own businesses really own a job. They haven't
Mhm.
put in the structure. And I know we're going to talk about this, but I really wanted to help people find the tools to build the structure and the value in their business so that they could take their successful business, make it sustainable, scalable, and saleable. And that brings you to today and me having the opportunity to meet April Garcia.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, what a story. Let me just ask a couple questions. First, one of the things we often talk about is a pivot point, right? So in PivotMe, we talk about this moment where everything changed. And you just illustrated several pivot points in your life where everything changed. And I love this idea of, if I would have still been going through the other door, this opportunity wouldn't have existed. And the problem is, as the saying goes, we look so long at that closed door, right? We look so long at this opportunity that we perceived as missed, or we kind of mourn that loss, and we don't see the window that's opened. We don't see the other door that opens. So I love all the pivot points that happened, and also the story of, it was your son's credit card debt that really initiated this fire in your belly for financial literacy. And so many of us, many Pivot Me listeners are business owners, and many of us are guilty of building stressful jobs, not businesses. And so I love that you pointed out that we've got to stay away from that job. Even if we're the one who signs the paycheck, we can often fall into that. I have to tell you a quick story though, Sharon. So there was a time years ago where I graduated high school, and I was this little ruffian kid. Man, I was just a scrapper, got in lots of trouble. I told the story a few podcasts ago that I was actually voted least likely to succeed. I mean, I was a troubled teen.
You were one of those.
I was one of those. You did not want your son or daughter to be friends with me. That was me. And I flipped a switch at around 18, 19, and I decided I was going to live a very different life now that I was an adult. Bought a ticket to London, went out on my own, put myself through college, all that sort of stuff. But during that time, I got a book, and it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read it to cover, and I was one of those people that couldn't wait for the next one. And I read every one in the series. I became a real estate investor before I was old enough to buy a beer, and never looked back. So it's funny that we're having this conversation. You just
I
told
love
that.
that story. I just
It's
love it.
it's
Thank you.
totally true. There, if you could see my bookshelf, they're all lined up at the bottom. So when Michelle connected us, I said, "Oh, I'm very familiar with her material because it's what got me into real estate." And I knew I was a fresh-faced kid. Went to my first closing in overalls and bright blue hair. Signed my first townhouse. So I just needed to let you know and thank you for the work that you did.
I love that. I absolutely adore that. A few weeks ago, Tarek Almus is a friend of mine, and he was the star of Flip and Flop, and
Mhm.
we've known each other for years. But he has a new fund investing in multifamily units, and I was supporting him at one of his kickoffs for the fund, and his partner came up to me, and his name is Chris, and he said, "Sharon, you don't know who I am, but 17 years ago, you came to teach my class, about my entrepreneurship class at the University of Arizona. And because of that class, I am now a multimillionaire in real estate. Oh my gosh, you just never know. You just never know whose heart you touch. And I applaud you, because a lot of people read the book and don't do anything. So April, you actually read it and did something.
I
So
did.
stand tall in your own pride,
Thank
because you
you.
set a great example for other people.
Thank you. I didn't do it all right. I made a lot of mistakes. For the first 2 years, I turned it over
Lots of
13
learning
people.
opportunity. Learning
I
on
uh,
the
I had
street.
a lot of character building days, let me tell you that. I learned a great deal, but I'm a big believer that once you get through a door, your job is to pull the next person through that. And so I wanted you to know that the information that you taught so many years ago, that I received it and I did my part in sharing it with other people along the way too. It's funny.
And now look at what you're doing. You were sharing it with all of your community. So I'm so proud of you. I'm so thankful, so
Yes,
appreciative that something I did inspired you to take that action. But I'm
huge.
so proud of what you're doing to help others. So thank you.
Absolutely. And the thing is, one thing I want to point out is you literally can take a book like this. I'm kind of in a different direction, but it's so relevant. If you're listening right now, you can literally take a book. It can be one book, completely change your life, your business, your entire trajectory. Because I'm going to be honest, and I'm not just saying this because we're talking. That book was that was the series for me. I didn't know anyone who invested in real estate. That was a crazy idea. Not family, friends. I didn't know a single person that did this kind of thing. And I was like, literally, I had this book and go, well, I think I know how to do this. In fact, I went to the loan officer and I didn't have the down payment. And I took a cash advance. This is going to make your CPA heart stop, so just brace yourself. I took a cash advance on a student visa at 27%. And that was the down payment for the house, which is terrible. Don't do that.
It
I
does
did
give me a
that, but
bit
don't do
of a
that. It
heartburn.
does. It hurts, doesn't it?
But you made it work. You made it work. And
I
that's what it's
did.
all about. And it's, the what Rich Dad Poor Dad did to create personal finance from a standpoint of a global personal finance brand. I really think that Exit Rich does the same thing for businesses, to help people
Yes.
understand how to create that stability and financial aptitude and growth and scalability for businesses.
Sure. And let's talk about that. So a lot of people don't think about, again, a lot of PivotMe listeners are business owners. And what I've found is that a lot of people don't think about exiting until they're a little far down the road. We got to be planning for the exit way before we're ready to exit. So talk to me about why you guys wrote Exit Rich and the things it can do for the business owner who's listening right now.
Well, thank you, April. I appreciate that. You've heard start with the exit in mind. Buying real estate. Your profit in real estate is on the buy, not on the sell. You've heard that statement too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, unless you want to work yourself silly until the day you die, when you start a business, you ought to have in mind what you want to do with it and how you want to exit. If you have a business where you have outside investors, their first question is, what's the exit?
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding, and you may not want to sell it, but you may want to have it so you can give it to your kids so they can inherit for generational wealth. And in order to do that, there's some few very important steps you have to do that we outline in Exit Rich, and that is build the foundation around the business. A lot of people fall in love with their product, start selling it, and never put the structure in the business. They don't have the right agreements. They don't own what they think they own because they haven't crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And so when somebody comes in potentially to buy you, they start asking questions, and your answer is the price comes down. They ask you another question, the price comes down, because you haven't done your homework. And so we want you to go through this book and be able to structure your business, check the boxes, so that when somebody comes in, they are impressed. First impression means a lot. They're impressed with how organized you are, how prepared you are, how you've identified that value in your company, you've protected it, you've leveraged it, and all of a sudden that price goes up, because all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 companies wanting to buy you and the price keeps going up. That's because you've done your homework to position your business in the best light and the best opportunity available.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Now, one thing you were saying is I noticed buyers, you said plural. Now, I've seen a lot of people that want to sell their business and they go, well, I've got a buyer. They've got this person in mind. What would you say to that?
Well, and it may very well be the right buyer. The question is, are you going to spend all of your time? Because what happens when you're running a business and somebody comes in and wants to do due diligence, it takes a ton of time. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that any potential buyer is qualified. You want to make sure that it's the right industry. You want to have some initial conversations about what their plans are so that you're not spending, I've seen this happen so many times, hours and hours and hours with somebody coming in and they want to see everything. They see everything and they go, oh, not for us, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just invested tons of time. I want
Mm-hmm.
you to invest the time in at the beginning before you have that buyer so that
Mm-hmm.
when a buyer comes in, you are already addressing those issues. You have answers for the questions they ask, but even before they come in, and that's where the advantage of my co-author, Michelle Sawyer Tucker, her company as a business broker, they know who the potential buyers are. They
Mm-hmm.
can bring them to the table, but they also can identify those that are just looky-loos, that are not really serious about buying your company. And that's where you have the benefit, whether it be a business broker or you have a mergers team, accountants and attorneys who
Mm-hmm.
understand the transactional side of
Mm-hmm.
selling a business, understand that process. They can help guide you because you probably haven't done it before. So let's bring
Mm-hmm.
in some experts who know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, what to say, what not to say, and have the opportunity to not use up all of your time dealing in an area that you're not familiar with.
Yeah. So when I hear some of the mistakes that business owners are making in their exit, I heard that lack of structure and processes. What are some of the other mistakes that they're doing that are ultimately either prohibiting the sale or getting them a much smaller valuation?
Well, where do I start?
So many.
So in this book, we talk about the 6 Ps. Let me go through that and I'll identify some of the reasons that you need to pay attention to them. The first one's people. Do
Hmm.
you have the right people on your team? Do you have people who are strong where you are weak? Do you have a mentor? Because when somebody comes in to buy you, they're going to look at your team. They want to know who's there, who they need to keep. All that very important to understand the right people. And too many business owners try to do everything themselves. That's why they own a job. And so the
Hmm.
first thing is, do you have your business set up so that it can run without you? Is that a scary thought? If it is, then you probably do too much. You want
Yeah.
to set the business up. Then the second one is your product. Now, let's talk about your product. You may be so in love with one product, but one product could be six if you had somebody helping you understand how to leverage that and how to go into different verticals. So,
Hmm.
product, then processes. All right. No matter where in the world I go to McDonald's, they all operate the same because of
Hmm.
the business systems. And so much of the intangible value of a company are in the systems.
Hmm.
People don't identify them, they rely on people. And it's so much easier to manage a system than personalities. And so identifying, how do you answer the phone? How do you recruit? How do you get people into the company? How do you process an order? How do you source your goods? How do you deliver? How do you pay? How do you charge? All of those are systems within your company. And usually within those systems, you're going to find how you do something better than your competition.
Hmm.
You can identify the next one, which is your proprietary, and that's your competitive advantage. How do you do things better than someone else in quality, price, performance? All of those things are very, very important, and most people ignore them. And that's my superpower. I help people identify their intangible values,
Hmm.
including intellectual property, identify it, protect it, and leverage it. So when you ask me what people don't do right, they don't have the right people on their team. They have not truly leveraged their products or protected them. They have not established the business systems. They're still relying on people and personality. Somebody leaves and they're, you know, at a loss because they
Hmm.
don't document what they do and how they do it. Proprietary. They haven't identified the intellectual property of their company. The fifth P is patrons. Now, this is really important for all of your listeners and viewers because in today's world, everybody's excited about their Instagram followers or Facebook, their LinkedIn, and they get so excited because they have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. You do not own them.
Hmm.
And so
Mark
it's
Zuckerberg owns them.
Yes, exactly. And so
Yeah.
They are lead generation tools, and they're very important. I'm not belittling the value of having a large social media presence, but you need to nurture them, bring them home to your database, provide a nurturing campaign, give away something so they come and register so that you end up bringing those names into your database. Many companies sell just for the database. So I challenge you to think about, how are you doing in that? Are you bringing them home? Are you adding to your database? Are you nurturing your database? And then the sixth one is profits. Of course, you want to make a profit, but most people focus on the product and the profit, and they don't have all those other elements. And that's why they can't sell their business.
That's powerful. The line that you just said, many companies sell because of their database. That is so important. When Michelle and I were talking a short time ago, I was telling her about a steel manufacturer that I'd gone up and consulted for a while. And when I said, "Okay, where's your database?" They've been in business for years. Well, what exactly did you mean? And I said, like a CRM, or where's your CRM? Didn't have one.
Did they point you to a file cabinet in the
They
corner?
sure did. They had a Rolodex at several different people's desks, not even at one desk. And you had to go hunt and peck. And I thought, okay, this is going to be more difficult than I thought. And they were 50, $60 million business, no database. And that's one of many times that I've seen that happen. And I thought, there's your biggest handicap right then. I mean, and they're thinking of their assets as their this staff and this amount of business and this proprietary product. And those are all important, but we couldn't even tell new people who they were selling to. And so this isn't necessarily a small business problem. This isn't necessarily a $5 million a year revenue business. This could be a $50 million a year business that's making the same mistakes.
That's right. It's huge. It's huge. And there are quite a few people out there that are making $50, $100 million, and they don't have the elements that we share in Exit Rich put together because they've grown so quickly. They haven't, and I use a comparison, since you have real estate investors in your group, of a house. You got to go down before you can go up. You got to build the foundation so that house can weather the storm. A house doesn't work if it doesn't have electricity and plumbing system. Those are the systems within a house. And so, yes, you can put lipstick on, you get the greatest furnishings, but if you don't have, in fact, we had a big major renovation here at my home and expanded the kitchen, and the plumber forgot to tie the kitchen sink into the plumbing lines.
Oh,
They had to completely crack open all of our tile and everything to do that. Systems, you got to have the systems, and they have to be working. And that's something that within a business, too many people are trying to use, duct tape and baling wire to keep the business going, and you cannot scale that way.
yeah. And it comes out like I think a lot of us entrepreneurs are guilty of that at first, right? Because we're resourceful. That's kind of our shtick, right? It's like, oh, I can make this work, and we can go in and kind of duct tape it together. But then there comes this tipping point where you no longer could do that and effectively scale your business. Sharon, let me ask you this. How often do you see it that it's, let's say, sub 100 million? How often is it the business owner that's the bottleneck for the business?
Oh, many times. When I talk about that first P, people, entrepreneurs are by far the best salesperson for their company. They are innovators. They like to create something new. They're solving a problem and serving a need. For the vast majority of them, they are lousy operators. They get bored, they get frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's really important to have people on your team who love to be operators. In my company, Angela Topman is my right hand. She's been with me 20 years, hired as an intern out of ASU. She is a systems queen and a accountability guru. I don't like to do those things. I'm all about shiny object syndromes. Give me something new to do, some problem to solve, and I'm going to go after it. And she pulls me back.
Yes.
How does this change our priorities? You need that give and take.
Yeah. If you don't have that person on the team, then you're having to step in for that, and you're not doing a very good job at it. It's a totally different skill set. We all have that. I have someone on my team that does that for me. When we're going to develop a new product, we're going to go in a new direction, she immediately goes into it. And I actually do like systems, but I still like the shiny new object, and she has to pull us back. And if you don't have that person on your team, make sure you put them in so they can kind of be your true north on some of these things. So let's see. So when we're looking at exit rich, we talked about a lot of the things that people do wrong. Have you seen the threads on the things that people are doing right? Do you get into a business and you go, man, they nailed it from the beginning? Is there some through lines that you can tell us about?
Well, absolutely. I think there's a few areas that I think can shake a few foundations that are on this program right now. You start a business, you have the legal entity. People go, "Oh, lawyers are too expensive. I'll pull something off the internet. I'll just write it up." But we have a handshake deal, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens. But people who really want to do it right and make sure the agreements are tight. So, for instance, when you're a small company with a big company, you have a deal with them. If it's not in writing, because the person you're negotiating with may not be in that chair in 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you have a legal document. So if that legal document does not include everything that you've been committed from this big company, you can get in trouble. So for when we clients, we mentor them, we support them through this process, understanding that you have to make sure you have the complete legal agreements to establish your rights, your ownership, your authority, the accountability in a relationship. Um, a lot of times my husband is an intellectual property attorney, as I had mentioned earlier. And years ago, many years ago, when we were living in Wisconsin, he represented Wendy's. And at the time, Wendy's had, and you're probably too young to remember this, but Wendy's had a commercial with three little old ladies. And he said, "Where's the meat? Where's the meat?
Oh, where's the beef?
Where's the beef?
I
Where's
do
the beef?"
remember that. Yes.
And
Yes.
Wendy's made billions after that. Everybody loved, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef?" And they got sued by a little outfit called Suburbia because they had the very similar commercial years before with three little old men coming up to the counter with the long hoagie thing saying, "Where's the meat?" Right? And
Oh.
on the surface of it, it was pretty scary for Wendy's because they had billions of dollars at risk. And, my husband looked at the documentation. So when this Suburbia hired, I think his name was Stottlemyre, a marketing agent, to do the commercial, they did not get ownership rights. It was not established as a work for hire. So Stottlemyre was within his rights to do the exact same commercial, changing it to three little ladies and from the meat to from "Where's the meat?" to "Where's the beef?" And so Wendy's won. But boy, did they go through panic. And so, as again,
Wow.
do you own what you pay for? And in today's world of outsourcing everything, a lot of companies think they own their database, they think they own their logos and their website.
Mm-hmm.
But did you have a written agreement that transfers ownership to you as a work for hire?
Mm.
9 times out of 10, we find that's a problem in most companies. Those companies that do it get themselves situated and they can actually grow and scale very quickly. Those companies that don't take care of those issues end up having great success and they start wobbling because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have it put together appropriately.
That is such a good reminder. You know what? And it's funny because even sometimes, Sharon, when we know better, we still kind of push the envelope. I'll tell you at the very beginning, this was originally called The Spark. It was for about 3 months until I got a notice of trademark infringement. They'd actually filed it wrong, so technically I didn't infringe. Long story short, hired an IP attorney, ended up landing on a name that was better suited. But it was such a good reminder because luckily it was at the beginning of our journey. But a lot of people that do podcasts, a lot of people that do a variety of different, even tangible, like the physical products, aren't checking to see if, and you shouldn't check, you
And they
should
think, "Oh, it's
hire.
not going to be a problem. They're in Europe or they're in the other side of the country." And all of a sudden you
Yep.
start creating great success.
And you get on
And
someone's
you get
radar.
and you get that registered letter saying, "Oops," and you put all that time, energy, and investment and equity,
Mm-hmm.
brand equity, into establishing a brand that you can no longer own. So
And
yes,
rebranding's a
so
nightmare.
important.
It's a nightmare. Okay. So tell me, paint a picture of exactly who this book is for.
Oh, great question, because it's so important. Obviously, with the title, you think it's for somebody that wants to sell their business, and it is. It absolutely is. Steve Forbes, my friend, says it's a gold mine for entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
but it's so much more than that. If you want to build a successful business, Yeah, you can take my Essential Components of a Successful Business online course. That's $2,000. You can hire me as a mentor for $50,000 a year, or you can buy this $24.97 book and go through the process of understanding how to add that strength and versatility into your business so that it can be a foundational business that becomes an asset. I can't believe it. I've been on this podcast this long, and this is the first time I've used this
Let's say
word.
the word asset.
My
You need to get it
favorite
in
word,
5 more times, Sharon.
yes, my favorite word on earth is asset, right?
Yes.
So your business becomes an economic engine because you've read and you've done what we talk about, building that foundation. You don't have to sell it, but it gives you the opportunity to find that value, identify it, protect it, and sleep better at night knowing that you own a business, not a job. It's also, if you are looking to invest in someone else's business, what an incredible tool to use this to analyze how they're doing.
Yes.
How do they rank on this? And it's a wonderful tool for that. It's a wonderful tool if you want to start a new business and say, how do I do it right? So yeah, it's for every business owner, whether you're an investor or an owner. Let's find those, that you're going to find one thing, minimum of one thing in here that's going to save your company and add value to it.
Yeah, that's tremendously valuable. No, Sharon, I'm thinking about through your career, the experience, the books. You've written so many books, and you've both enjoyed a lot of success on your own accord, and you've worked with tons of successful people. One of the things that we talk about on PivotMe also is just sort of these success practices, things that you've seen that have helped people get ahead, whether that's in real estate or just business at all. We were talking a little bit about this before we started the podcast. Have you noticed some through lines in the people that have been successful through the years? Again, real estate or business, what's the correlation?
Well, I launched a Play Big movement a few years ago, and it's about being number one in your field, living your legacy, and creating maximum impact. The way you're number one in your field is that you sharpen your tools. You stay as an authority in your business. You know what's happening. Real estate right now is just crazy. Lowest interest rates, high demand, low supply. But it is a perfect time to get involved in real estate. And Mike and I have gotten more involved recently with joining eXp Realty because we see it as a model that helps real estate agents. But for a success person, from many, many years ago, back in the time of faxes, I had this daily practice, and it was the 2-2-2 rule: 2 phone calls, 2 written notes, and 2 faxes about the future of my business. Because as an entrepreneur, we get started, we're like in a car, we have our steering wheel, we have the windshield, we can go anywhere we want, we have our foot on the accelerator, we're accelerating, we're absolutely having tremendous success. And then we get the call from the accountant and our foot comes off the accelerator, we have to deal with last week's payroll. Then we get another call from our attorney, like from your trademark attorney, and it's like, oh my gosh, I got to deal with something that happened months ago. Foot comes off the accelerator. You are your best salesperson. So you want to constantly be driving forward, but those kinds of things happen. And so for me, having a habit where every day I pushed forward and did something about the future of my business with 2 phone calls, 2 notes, and 2 faxes. Now today it's like 5 twos because faxes are out, but I still do the notes, the calls. I do, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So again, every day doing something so I can reach more people and expand my impact.
Wow. So what does as you expand your impact, I don't want to jump into the what's next for you because that's one of our last questions, but I'm curious what you're driving to. Like what's the goal?
Well, thank you for that, April, because I've actually started getting a complex about it because in the last 3 months, I've had so many people, why are you still doing what you're doing? Because I've been financially free since I was 38. That was a long time ago. And but my passion, I grew up with a father that would ask me each night, Sharon, have you added value to someone's world today and someone's life? And he's been gone 15 years, but I still ask myself that, have I added value to someone's life today? And so what's next for Sharon is the next interview, the next phone call, the next way that I can pour into someone with my experience, my mistakes that I learned from, and my learning opportunities and my successes, where I can see, for most people, that almost everyone I work with, I see a greater potential for them than they see for themselves. And it's such a joy to me. And we talk about pivot time. Obviously I've shared some of my business pivots, leaving public accounting, leaving Rich Dad. But the greatest pivot in my life was in December of 2012 when I lost my youngest son. And my life went into what I would call neutral stasis. I was, numb, a world of numb for several years. And I realized that a lot of people have that happen to them, whether it be a death, a divorce, a financial setback, an illness. And I actually decided to retire about 5 years ago. I got a lot of pushback from family and friends. And I even heard my son in my ear saying, "Get over it, Mom. There's more for you to do." And that's when I launched the Play Big movement, and Facebook as a group, and anybody can join it. But I decided that I was still here for a reason. And if I was going to be here, I needed to play a bigger game and play big again. And so I wanted to invite people to come on this journey with me, to be number one in their field, to live their legacy and create maximum impact, because every one of you, no matter what stopped you in your tracks, for me, loss of a child, it's hard to top that in my world. We're not supposed to outlive our children, but it could have been a death, a divorce, a financial setback, an illness. You're still here. You're still here for a reason. And what you've been through, you can help others going through the same thing. And so that is really my driving force, is to help people find that success and elevate them to the position of greatest potential in their lives. And that's what feeds me and helps heal a little bit of that hole in my heart.
I bet. I bet. I'm so grateful for the work that you do and for the contribution focused mindset that you have and the way that you have pivoted. And ultimately it ended up back into you pouring into the world even more. So that's absolutely amazing. One of the questions I usually ask Sharon is, and I feel like you kind of said it in there a little bit, but if you could tell the world one thing, what would it be?
Well, you are perfect just the way you are. God made us all uniquely who we are. Don't try to be someone else. Just be uniquely you, and don't wait for that light in the end of the tunnel, because that means you're giving up your powers. Become your own beacon of light. Stand in your own power. Create the world that you desire, deserve, and it's waiting for you. So we're all where we are today because of the choices we made before today. If you want something different in life, simply make different choices and go out and create the success that you deserve.
Man, that was fantastic. Oh my gosh, that gave me chills, Sharon. Um, one of the thank you for that. That was amazing. One of the questions I usually ask a little bit earlier, so I'm going to mark it for my audio editor so we can put it back a little bit, is um, Sharon, would you share a mistake that you've made? A mistake that you've made in business? We all self-sabotage. We do things we know we shouldn't have done. I picked a name that I knew I should have hired counsel for first. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've made?
Well, I love that question, because the greatest mistake, business mistake I ever made, was when I left public accounting. One of my clients called me, and he was buying a company out of bankruptcy. And so I knew I was working really crazy hours. And I went back to my apartment and I did the whole pros and cons on a yellow legal pad. I could argue both sides. It didn't help me a bit because I was very successful in my career, but I knew I wanted to own my own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And my hand took off across the top of the page and said, why not? Why not do something different? Why not take a path less traveled? Why not solve a problem, serve a need? Why not take a risk, step outside your comfort zone? So I made the decision to join him. And within a few weeks, I found all kinds of corruption. And I was like, oh my God, now what am I going to do? I'm newly licensed as a CPA and I'm stepping into a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
So I took a few days off, came back, and there was a young man in my office that was there. The company had been involved in some litigation. And we met when he was going through my drawers. His name was Michael Lechter, and we just celebrated 40 years of marriage. So I tell everybody, Napoleon Hill says, out of every adversity comes a seed of an equal or greater benefit. My worst business mistake, till to this, probably till today, still, the worst business mistake gave me my best life choice. And so we're none of us are truly perfect. I know that might burst a few bubbles, but and life is there for us to learn from. And we all make mistakes. Too many people use those mistakes to define themselves. They think they are the failure. No, a failure is an occurrence. It's not a definition. And it's a learning opportunity for you to not repeat it, but to help others avoid it as well.
Failure is an occurrence. Oh, that is so good. Just because we're on kind of the mistakes and self-sabotage vein, and I'm just blown away by your answers. Why do you think people struggle with self-sabotage so much? Is it because they make a mistake and they stay in it? They don't move past it, they don't redefine it? Why do people struggle with that?
Well, I think in my second book with the foundation was Outwitting the Devil. It was something that was hidden away for 72 years. Napoleon Hill wrote it right after releasing Think and Grow Rich, because he realized even though people know what they're supposed to do to become successful, they don't do it. And it was in large part because of fear. And he talks about the fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, but also fear of criticism. And that fear of criticism, I think, is pervasive in our world today. And so fear holds people back. We self-sabotage. We don't take action, fear of inaction. What happens is when you're fearful, you're looking down. You want to get under the covers, turn off the lights. And so you miss the world of opportunities around you. In 3 Feet from Gold, which was my first book with the foundation, we had the personal success equation, which is your passion and your talent. And that's all about you, what school teaches you. My passion was actually anger. We weren't teaching kids about money in school. My talent, my many, many years as a CPA and publishing, so I could combine those. And most of us stop there. We think we have to do it on our own, but it's truly a business as a team sport. So you have that passion and talent times a power of association. I'm delighted to now have a new association with April. Okay, power of association, people on your team, kind of what I talked about in Exit Rich. People, do you have a mentor that speeds your way to success, helps you steer around pitfalls? Do you have the right people on your team? And then times a, taking action. How many times do we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't do it?
Yeah.
During COVID, I'm changing my day pajamas for my night pajamas, or I'm binge watching Netflix. It drive me nuts. What an incredible opportunity for us to redefine our life and redefine our business. And then the last element is F for faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you are doing, faith that it's going to be successful. And too many of us, that F is fear. And fear paralyzes us or motivates us. And so in the book, Outwitting the Devil, we talk about how to blast through that fear. And part of that is definiteness of purpose. But a lot of people do self-sabotage. And it's so important for you to have that self-discipline, to learn from adversity. But also it talks about the power of controlling your environment. What are you allowing in your brain? Who are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with people who want you to succeed? Are you hanging out with people who are jealous of your success? And then the control of your time. Are you spending your time, exchanging time for money? Or are you investing your time in buying, building, and creating income producing assets? And so I know that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but so many people are fearful, and they're not going to achieve the success they deserve until they find that faith and start looking up, because the opportunities are right there in front of you.
They sure are. They sure are. I find that people always think that the answer is behind one more degree or one more thing that's just outside of their grasp. And once they get that, then there's something else that pops up, and it's usually us that are sabotaging our success.